Sure, hair check. That's great.
15 seconds, councilors. Good evening and welcome to the March 26, 2024 public planning meeting. Members of the public were provided with the following methods to watch and or participate in this open meeting. Attend in person at the North Dumfries Community Complex. Attend electronically via Zoom to observe the meeting or to speak to an item on the agenda. You can watch the live stream by accessing the meeting on the Township's YouTube page, or you can submit written comments to the Clerk's Division that were provided to council members and will form part of the public record. I'd like to call the meeting to order, please, and can I have approval of the agenda? Councillor Osman.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Tilley, that council adopt the March 26, 2024 council agenda, public planning meeting as presented with the following addenda. And correspondence and attachments received by Paul and Pat Cabral regarding item 8.1, report PD 09-2024, proposed telecommunication tower at 1056 Whistlebear Road, file number TC-0223. And I had correspondence attachments received from Jody and David Olenek regarding item 8.1, report PD 09-2024, proposed to mount telecommunication tower at 1056 Whistlebear Road, file number TC-0223.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. I would now like to do the Indigenous acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land, their achievements and their contributions to our community. We offer this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples of Canada. And I think a lot of us fear that the Indigenous want money or they want the land back. But what they truthfully want is respect. Respect for who they are and for their values and their stewardship of the land. They want to share that knowledge with us so that we can walk alongside them to make this a better Canada. So as we think about that respect for one another, let's pause as we contemplate. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest, the general nature thereof? Seeing none. Adoption of the minutes for February 27th, Councilwoman.
Moved by myself by Councilor Wilms that council approve the following meeting minutes, 6.1 public planning meeting minutes, February 27th, 2024.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Motion to sit as Committee of Adjustment, Councilor Tilley, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councilor Osner, that the council meeting adjourned at 7:03 p.m. and to sit as Committee of Adjustment for the purpose of holding public meetings pursuant to the provisions of the Planning Act.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And Councilor Wilms, Committee of Adjustment minutes, February 27th.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bullerman, that Committee of Adjustment approve the meeting minutes dated February 27, 2024.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Um, 7.2, notice was report number PD 1024 2852 Cedar Creek Road, consent file number B-0124. Notice has been given in accordance with the Planning Act. The Secretary Treasurer will record all persons who provide comments on this application and those who register with the Clerk's Department to request a notice of decision. Those individuals will be notified by the decision or the convening of a future meeting on the application. So as you came in, if you would sign the sheet on which item you wish to be notified of, and then the clerks will keep you updated on the information. So the sheet is over on the table there, so if you want to take the time to sign it. I'd now like to introduce Michael Campos, Manager of Planning, who will present the application. Michael, please.
One second,
Welcome.
just get the presentation up here. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, senior staff, and members of the public. I'm pleased to present to you a public information report relating to a consent application for a lot addition that has been received for 2852 Cedar Creek Road, file number B0124. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an overview of the proposal received, to solicit comments, and to identify issues or matters to be assessed by staff as we move forward with the review of the application. The subject property is located north of the intersection of Cedar Creek Road and the Cedar Creek Road on-ramp to Highway 401 West. The portion of land to be severed from the Millgate land holding, which is 2852 Cedar Creek Road, is 3.03 hectares in size and is proposed to be added to the Teco Block property, which we will refer to as the receiving lot, immediately to the south with an existing total lot area of 6.59 hectares. 2852 Cedar Creek Road is presently vacant and was previously operated as an aggregate extraction site. The receiving lot is developed with an industrial building operated by Teco Block, which uses the site for manufacturing and the outside storage of landscaping products and raw materials. Surrounding land uses consist of industrial and agricultural uses. For the purpose of providing context, the subject property, which is highlighted in red on your screen, is the subject of a draft approved plan of subdivision, which establishes the lands with 3 industrial lots, a stormwater management pond, and 1 internal cul-de-sac roadway that provides access from Cedar Creek Road. The subject lands are zoned Z11 industrial with a holding provision, while the Teco Block property is zoned similarly, but without the holding provision. The lands are designated in their entirety as Highway 401, Regional Road 97, and Prime Industrial Strategic Reserve unserviced by the Township Official Plan. So the purpose of the consent application is to convey a portion of the subject property as a lot addition to the adjacent property to the immediate south, and known as the Teco Block property. If approved, the lot addition would result in the receiving lot having an increased lot area of 9.62 hectares. This is an overall increase in the lot size by 3.03 hectares, which reflects the total land being severed from the subject property. No new lots are proposed to be created through this consent application. The proposed consent application has always been proposed and is a requirement of lifting the holding provisions from the zoning applied to the subject property. As shown on your screen, the map identifies the lands that are proposed to be severed and added to the Teco Block property. The lands hatched in red is the portion being severed, and if approved, will be added to the lands to the immediate south, identified as the receiving lot on the image. Figure 1 on your screen provides a visualization of the existing Teco Block property, which is proposed to receive the lands from the subject property to the immediate north. The lands will provide additional future growth opportunities for Teco Block and will establish a lot size that is complementary to the existing blocks created and established through the draft approved plan of subdivision. Figure 2 provides a visualization of the existing access to 2852 Cedar Creek Road. Presently, the subject property is not constructed with any buildings or structures and is not being actively used for any purpose. This will serve as a future access to the 3 industrial building lots. At this time, planning staff have not received any comments from members of the public related to this proposed application. Any submitted correspondence received this evening or prior to a recommendation report being brought forward will be included with the final recommendation report for consideration. Regarding agency correspondence received through the circulation review period, the majority of comments received have included no comments or objections to the proposed application. The Region of Waterloo has identified that the owner will be required to undertake a minor modification to the draft approved plan subdivision to reflect the proposed changes as a result of the proposed consent application. Planning staff have also noted that the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry's online aggregate mapping identifies existing aggregate licenses still being applied to both the subject property and the receiving lot. Confirmation of the status of these licenses being relinquished from the properties will be required from the applicant. At this time, staff is recommending that no decision on the merits of the planning application be made and that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for further consideration as part of a future report to council. In a future staff report will consider matters including but not limited to all the comments and correspondence that we've received during the consultation process, the effect of the proposed consent application on matters of potential interest, such as promoting efficient development and land use patterns, the appropriate location of growth and development, and the protection and efficient use of employment areas. If the subject proposal, in the opinion of staff, is desirable for the property and compatible with the surrounding uses. Whether the development conforms to the township official plan and general zoning bylaw number 689-83. The status of the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry aggregate license and how to deal with it going forward. An amendment to the subdivision file number 30T-2302 to recognize the reduced land area of the Millgate Holdings Inc. land holding and the associated conditions to draft plan approval. And finally, the impact of the proposed lot additions to surrounding properties and the neighboring area. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this application? Seeing none, questions, councillors? Councillor Wilms.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to staff, I was just wondering if we'd had any idea of the rehabilitation that has occurred on that site, since it seems to have, like, the aggregate seems to have been extracted. Do we have any update on that?
I believe that's what Michael was pointing at, is that it's strange that the license hasn't been relinquished because we've already moved forward with some. Did you want to make any comments here?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The ministry on the existing Teco Block property did relinquish the license. And as such, it did not require the rehabilitation of the existing building site because it was incorporated into the future urban use, being the Teco Block manufacturing facility and the associated outside storage parking area. Conversely, on the plan of subdivision itself, being the balance of the Millgate Holdings property, if council through the process moves forward with the preparation of a subdivision agreement and the owner moves forward for registration, the ministry will no longer require rehabilitation of the property in accordance with the aggregate license. They will default to the future urban use, being the plan of subdivision for employment activities. And as part of the employment plan of subdivision and the associated engineering schedules to the subdivision agreement, it will deal with the grading transitions of the side slopes, stormwater, how the master grading will occur across the property, how stormwater will be dealt with, and landscaped areas. So one process will lead to the other, and the ministry will sidestep because it's no longer being set aside for aggregate purposes. It's migrating to employment related activity. That's why there are conditions of draft plan approval to make sure that there is the linkage between tiring of the aggregate license and the advancement of an employment related subdivision and the other checks and balances on the zoning. So those are the processes, and that's how it would be dealt with as a transitional activity.
And any other questions, councillors? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please, Councillor Osman?
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Tilley, that PD report number 10-2024 be received, and that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for consideration in a future report to the committee on the disposition of this matter.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Councillor Roman, my motion to adjourn committee of adjustment, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Wilms, that pursuant to the Planning Act, public meeting of the committee adjustment be adjourned at 7:14.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Um, 8.1, report PD 09-2024. Again, I'd like to reiterate, if you came in on this one, that you'd sign the sheet at the back so that you make sure that we'll follow up with you on any future happenings with this file. Notice has been given in accordance with the Township of North Dudley's telecommunication tower and telecommunications antenna preferred location protocol. I'd like to introduce Michael Pimpos, Manager of Planning, who will present this application. Michael, please.
Thank you again, Mayor. Share my screen. There we are. So I'm happy to be here today to present to you a public information report relating to an application that's been received for a telecommunication tower at 1056 Whistlebear Road, file number TC02/23. The purpose of this meeting is to provide an overview of the proposal received, to solicit comments, and to identify issues or matters to be assessed by staff as we move forward with the review of the application. So the subject property is located northeast of the intersection of Whistlebear Road and Roseville Road. The subject property is T-shaped and provides approximately 118 meters of frontage onto Whistlebear Road and 95 meters onto Roseville Road. The site has a total lot area of approximately 8.35 hectares. The property is primarily used for agricultural purposes and contains existing farm-related structures on the property. One single detached residential dwelling is also located on the site. The surrounding land uses to the north of Roseville Road are primarily agricultural in nature, along with existing aggregate extraction sites being located to the west of the property. The Brown Rural Settlement area, comprising of several residential properties, is located to the south of Roseville Road, immediately across from the subject property's Roseville Road frontage. The subject property is designated rural area and protected countryside by the township's official plan and is zoned as Z1 agriculture under general zoning bylaw number 689-83. The applicant has submitted a telecommunication tower application to erect a lattice tripole communications tower that is 50 meters in height and located within a fenced-in compound that's planned to comprise an area of approximately 144 square meters. The proposed tower is intended to provide wireless voice and data services to subscribers and will establish coverage for an area of the township that is currently experiencing a large coverage and capacity hole in the network. The proposed tower will also permit additional carriers or other broadcasters to use the tower to install their own equipment, promoting co-location and reducing the need for additional towers to be installed in the future. The proposed fenced-in compound will include a locked, alarmed, and electronically monitored mechanical equipment shelter. Fencing will be installed around the base of the tower, an equipment shelter, and is proposed to include one locked gate access point. And as you can see on the image on your screen, the proposed tower is planned to be located at the furthest possible location on the property from either of the two frontages, being situated near the easternmost property line. It is also located 350 meters away from the nearest residential dwelling, being 1048 Whistlebear Road. Following the completion of the public consultation process, the township will inform the applicant and Industry Canada through a signed letter that the local land use consultation process has been completed in accordance with the township's telecommunication tower protocol, including comments raised during the public consultation process and recommendations regarding the proposed development. On your screen are photo simulations of the view of the property and telecommunication tower for both the Roseville Road and Whistlebear Road frontages. The first image on the left shows the property if viewed from Roseville Road, both without the telecommunication tower and with the proposed tower erected. Similarly, the photo on the right illustrates the same, but from the Whistlebear Road frontage. At this time, planning staff have received 2 pieces of correspondence from members of the public in opposition to the proposed telecommunication tower. The comments received outline concerns regarding the impact of the tower on surrounding wildlife, as well as concerns with the proposed location and height of the tower. Planning staff will consider the public comments as part of their review of the application and will include them in staff's future recommendation to Industry Canada. Regarding agency correspondence received through the circulation review period, the majority of comments received have included no comments or objections to the proposed telecommunication tower. The township's Engineering and Public Works Department has included comments seeking a grading plan be submitted, as well as proof of a legal outlet for stormwater management. The applicant will be addressing these comments as part of a future submission and prior to a recommendation report being prepared by staff. As part of the review of this application, the township's telecommunication tower protocol outlines that the proponent is responsible for organizing and chairing a community information session in addition to a public meeting before council. A community information session was held on March 14th, 2024 at the North Dumfries Community Complex from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Notification of this information session was included in the Air News. Mail notices were also sent to neighboring property owners, and a notification sign was also posted on the subject property, which identified the date and time for the session. One member of the public attended the session and requested clarification regarding the proposed location of the tower on the property, as well as asked questions regarding safety protocols. Planning staff, along with the applicant, responded to the questions at the meeting, and no further questions were submitted by members of the public at that. So at this time, staff is recommending that no decision on the merits of the merits of the application be made, and that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for further consideration as part of a future report to the committee. A future report will consider matters including, but not limited to, all comments and correspondence received during the consultation process, if the subject proposal, in the opinion of staff, is desirable for the property and complies with the township's telecommunication tower and telecommunication antenna preferred location protocol, and the potential impact of the proposed development on surrounding properties. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Michael. I believe we have Lucas Cuff and Sarah Taylor on Zoom. Lucas, Sarah?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just gonna share my screen to help share my presentation. Please let me know if it's visible.
We can see that.
All right, perfect. All right, good evening, councilors, mayor, and members of the community. My name is Lucas Cuff. I plan on working at Fontour International, and I'm here along with my colleague, Sarah Taylor, representing Signum's interest in a proposed telecommunications tower at 1056 Whistle Bay Road. Fontour is a planning consultancy company that specializes in telecommunication towers, and we have been hired by Signum to oversee the planning process for this application. So Signum Wireless Towers, Inc. is a third-party tower builder focusing on building towers without competition with other telecommunication companies, and work with them to ensure less towers are required within municipalities across Ontario. Many telecommunication towers allows for co-location, meaning that a number of carriers may co-locate their services on a single tower. This allows for the reduction of tower proliferation, which means having less telecommunication towers across an area. On the screen here is a little visual depicting of what it looks like to have a co-located tower versus multiple towers from multiple carriers. Now, to give some background information on wireless networks, a wireless network can be thought of as a series of interconnected parts with base stations and antennas working together to create a network. When providing their services, these networks create coverage areas which provide telecommunication services. And when adequately placed, they provide continuous wireless service across an area. On the screen, you can see a depiction of what a network looks like with a radius around individual towers showing the coverage area. However, these networks only service a fixed number of calls and data requests. If there is an increased number of calls, for instance, the network's capacity is reduced to provide service to the closest signals. To solve these problems and to provide adequate telecommunication services, those gaps need to be filled by constructing new telecommunication towers. On the screen, it shows the same image of the last slide with the coverage areas made smaller to show the reduction in network capacity, and then new towers which are placed in these setting gaps of coverage. We will now move on to why build a new tower and location of the tower. Some purposes of wireless service towers include providing EMS, fire and police service reception, voice and data, internet service, internet streaming, and for business needs as increasing number of people are working from home. To provide all these services, each carrier must have their own antenna equipment on the tower. In this application, Signum is proposing a 50-meter lattice tripole telecommunication tower within the township of North Dumfries, the locations of which you can see on the image at 1056 Whistle Bay Road, Ayr, Ontario. Postal code is N1R5S3. We are currently in the public consultation phase, and we are looking to receive feedback from the community regarding the proposed site. Telecommunication towers are federally regulated by Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, otherwise known as ISED Canada, and we are following the township's already established telecommunication tower and telecommunication antenna preferred location protocol as part of the planning process. The map on the slide demonstrates the existing telecommunication infrastructure within the area of the proposed tower, with the closest tower being approximately 2.2 kilometers northwest of the proposed tower, which is a 15-meter Rogers Communication Tower at 1 Langdon Drive. This tower is also a temporary tower and is not a permanent installation. So here's a photo simulation completed from Roseville Road, approximately 350 meters looking northwest towards the tower. And there were some comments provided to the township regarding the effects of telecommunication towers and the EMF energy that comes from antenna systems on natural features and wildlife. To mitigate any potential impacts to natural features and wildlife, Signum follows the recommended best practices for communication tower design, siting, construction, operation, maintenance, and decommissioning established by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, published in March of 2021. There are 4 main recommendations that Signum has followed to mitigate these impacts with this particular site. Firstly, to prevent harm to birds, it's been advised to avoid tower lighting, which can attract birds and lead to collisions or exhaustion. While the need for lighting is subject to Transport and Navigation Canada's decision, the current plan does not anticipate requiring lighting. Secondly, it is recommended that towers should not exceed 199 feet, are 60 meters, to ensure sufficient airspace between the tower and bird flight paths. With the proposed height of 50 meters, the tower allows for ample free airspace regardless of weather conditions. Thirdly, freestanding towers are preferred over guide towers to minimize harm to birds and other flying species. Signum's proposal includes a 15-meter lattice tripole tower, which is a freestanding tower design, which also aligns with this recommendation. Finally, it's recommended to avoid impacting significant natural features. Signum has situated the proposed tower adjacent to an existing building with access routes on developed land. The nearest significant natural feature lies approximately 160 meters west of the tower, exceeding the 3 times its height, thus meeting the recommendation criteria. To deepen our dedication to minimizing the impacts of tower and EMF energy on the environment, we're pleased to share photographs of osprey, a bird species, nesting on a Signum tower located in Urbsville, Ontario. While these images spotlight just one bird species, it's important to acknowledge that reactions to towers and emitted energy may vary among different species. Nevertheless, we believe these photos offer a tangible glimpse into the intersection of telecommunication towers and wildlife. Regarding the specific impacts of EMF energy on wildlife, it is important to note that we adhere strictly to established regulations. For inquiries or concerns regarding the effects of this energy on local wildlife, we encourage you to reach out to Health Canada and consulting their Safety Code 6 regulations. Further details on Safety Code 6 will be provided in the subsequent slides. And while I don't claim to expertise in natural ecology and wildlife, I want to reassure the community and council members that Signum has diligently followed recommendations from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to mitigate potential impacts. Our efforts aim to balance the need for coverage in underserviced areas of North Dumfries with environmental considerations. Now to move to health and safety, I want to discuss Safety Code 6 and what it is. Safety Code 6 is maintained by Health Canada and is the standard that governs the limits of human exposure to electromagnetic fields for any broadcasting endeavor in Canada. It has been first published in 1979, being consistently revised. It has also been revised since 2015. The RF exposure limits in Safety Code 6 are consistent with science-based limits used in other parts of the world, such as the United States, the European Union, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. This graphic here depicts what different sources release RF emissions and where they fall on the radio frequency spectrum, the left side being lower emissions and the right side showing higher emissions. Radio frequency emissions fall into 2 categories. Non-ionizing energy, which is electromagnetic energy that does not break down the bonds between atoms and molecules, which means it does not break down the chemical bonds within cells and tissues. And then there's ionizing energy, which is energy that can have enough power to break down the bonds between atoms and molecules. You can see from left to right where certain items in our day-to-day life falls on the spectrum, with power lines being at 60 gigahertz, mobile phones being at 700 megahertz, baby monitors being at 900 megahertz, Wi-Fi being at 5 gigahertz, and gamma rays being at 1 zettahertz. The Safety Code 6 limit that has been chosen is already 50 times lower than the threshold for any adverse health effects. These limits are set well below the levels of all known potential adverse health effects and provide protection for all age groups, including children, on a continuous basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This means that if anyone, including a small child, was exposed to RF energy from multiple sources within the Safety Code 6 limits for 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, there would be no adverse health effects. Telecommunication equipment on towers emit only a fraction of what the Safety Code 6 limit is, so falls even lower than the threshold for potential adverse health effects. If you have any more questions about Safety Code 6, they can be directed to Health Canada with their contact information provided here and on the final slide of this presentation. In today's digital age, public safety answering points, or PSAPs, in major urban centers are seeing significant shift in emergency communication patterns. More than half of all 911 calls now originate from mobile devices, with certain regions reporting figures exceeding 70%. Though these towers are not within major urban areas, it still provides some context as to the need for effective emergency services in all areas of the township. Recognizing the critical need for swift and reliable emergency response, Signum is willing to host township services on the proposed tower. By doing so, we aim to ensure the community of North Dumfries receives uninterrupted and dependable service capable of handling any emergency calls effectively. It is our commitment to bolster community safety and response capabilities in this area. Wireless service in North Dumfries is in need of upgrading to serve current and future needs. This one tower will be able to accommodate multiple carriers, preventing proliferation in and around the township of North Dumfries. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you, Lucas. Council, do you have any questions to Lucas at this time? Not at this time, thank you. Tom Woodcock, planning ecologist at the Rare Charitable Research. Welcome, Tom. It's been a while.
Well, it has.
Happy Tom, see it.
Don't see any buttons or anything. I'm not sure I know where they are.
There you go.
The sound, okay. Thank you very much, councillors and Madam Mayor, for speaking to me today. We spoke about cell towers at the adjacent property on 1024 Roseville Road several years ago. And many of our concerns at the Rare Charitable Research Reserve, where I'm planning ecologist, still hold. Our reserve is a noted site of conservation research and education in the region of Waterloo. It encompasses about 300 hectares within the township of North Dumfries, between Roseville Road and the Grand River, running sort of along Blair Road, Blair and Galt. Currently, we also have a conservation easement on Barry's Lake property, located to the south of Roseville Road. And we also have further interest in some of the natural features in the area that we're expecting to take over ownership of and stewarding future. We are a charitable organization. We steward these lands on behalf of the community, both for the ecological services they provide. We provide trails free to the public in some areas of our property, and we also provide significant research opportunities for local universities and significant educational opportunities for other levels of schooling. This tower in particular is quite close to the southern border of our property. It's less than 50 meters away, as shown in the map provided by the proponent. That portion of our property is a long-term successful research project in the conservation of grassland birds, which are include several threatened species. And our main concern is not necessarily with some of the safety features that the proponent just outlined, such as the lack of guy wires, which can interfere with flight of birds and bats, and also lighting, which can also attract animals that are moving through the habitat and alter their path. We're concerned mostly with the presence of a source of electromagnetic radiation located both close to our property and also on some significant wildlife habitats, such as the pathway of migratory birds between Barry's Lake and the confluence of the Grand and Speed rivers, which are located on our property, both of which are significant stopover points for migratory waterfowl and other birds. There's a background amount of radio frequency in the environment, and many animals, including birds and bats and insects, are much more sensitive to this than we are. And it's been shown in numerous studies that behaviors can be altered, fitness can be reduced, and we're concerned about these impacts on species that are using our property. So much of what I said last time is still, of course, in effect. I have to update my report submitted during the public comment portion of this process. But just to summarize, we have four main concerns with this property: the electromagnetic frequency released by the tower, we encroach on rare property and impede conservation activities on our property, including our long-term grassland bird project. The field immediately to the north of the proponent's site, 1056 Whistlebear, is not simply an agricultural field. It is this fact research project area. We believe that the tower, we don't know this for sure, but we don't experience any mobile service problems on our own property. There are few dwellings in the area, apart from Brown subdivision to the south, which I understand does suffer from some shortcomings in the data field. But if the service is either focused on Cambridge West or Brown subdivision, we feel that perhaps a tower less intrusive to the natural areas, closer to the desired service area, could be preferred. Proponents indicate that the tower is exempt from environmental assessment under federal regulations, which is true. However, this is not the same as being environmentally benign. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife regulations or recommendations that were cited notwithstanding, the U.S. does see value in looking at least developing monitoring and standards for the effects of wildlife. February 2014, the director of the Office of Environmental Policy and Compliance in the Department of the Interior stated concerns that these FCC regulations did not take into account potential effects concerning radiation on birds and other wildlife. Similarly, the European Environment Agency stated that independent research into many unknowns about biological and ecological effects of RF EMF are urgently needed, given the global exposure of over 5 billion people and many other species, especially those like bees and some birds, whose navigation systems are being possibly affected by such radiations and the effects on the breeding of wild organisms. Finally, Industry Canada states a preference for co-location of infrastructure, which the proponent already touched on. As we discussed in the previous cell tower discussions back in 2017, new water towers in the area would be potentially ideal locations, and in that situation at least, in some cases they were closer to the nominal preferred point that was indicated by the proponent at that time. So in closing, I think that it should be the obligation of the proponents to demonstrate that the infrastructure will not harm resident organisms, especially since it's a conservation research area that depends on organisms that are behaving in their natural way. will not harm migratory birds, particularly those using rare habitats and other significant habitats in the area such as Barry's Lake. There should be no negative effect on the chosen land uses of neighboring properties imposed by the presence of this tower, including species conservation and scientific research. We respectfully ask the Township of North Dumfries not to concur with the siting of this tower, and furthermore call on Industry Canada to develop proper environmental regulations, non-human safety regulations, and consider neighboring property owners' decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or comments, councillors? Seeing none, is there anyone else from the public that wishes to speak on this item? Can you come to mic, please, and state your name, please?
Thank you. My name is Paul Cabral. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. Last time I spoke to you was in 2016, the SBA tower proposal. I didn't need glasses for reading, but I do need now. So I wanted to touch on more of the human side of it. We've lived in Brown subdivisions for 25 years now. It's a beautiful area. I think back in 2016, there was a need at the time for high-speed internet. And when I talked to some of the residents there, you know, some of them were for the tower because they needed the data, right? We have nothing there. But a couple of years ago, Bell came in and we all have, thank God, high-speed internet, fiber through Bell. The entire subdivision has that. So I think you're going to see this time around a lot more opposition than there previously was in 2016 because we don't need the data. And we currently live at 1243 Roseland Road. We don't have any problems with our cell phone reception either. So I'm not sure if this proposal is really for North Dumfries or if this is something that pushing towards Cambridge. So he touched a little bit, Tom touched a bit about the dangers of EMF radiation. And it's only been the last 20 years or so that there's been a high concentration of cell towers and a lot more cell phone use. And they say that it takes 20 to 30 years for tumors to develop. So we're just into that phase now where, you know, there's more and more studies that are being done. And there's a lot more questions, you know, about the safety and the effects of the radiation. And certainly from my perspective, you lose sleep at night, you know, because you have kids and you worry about them, you know, and then I look out the front of my door and there's a cell tower down the street. So, you know, I'm not sure where the company's coming from in terms of needing us in North Dumfries needing it. I don't think we in Brown need it because we have good cell phone reception and so forth. So my presentation touched a little bit about the wetlands and then obviously birds, but I think Tom did a great job in talking about rare and everything that they do and the dangers that it presents to animals and the wildlife. I think I'll skip to the next page there. I talked about cell towers, you know, and wetlands and so forth. But I think, you know, I want to touch base. I think you touched on the nominal position. So when SBA did a study in 2016, they found that the nominal position that the tower needed to be was near Warncliffe Way, but it was in Cambridge, in the property of Cambridge. And that is the actual, at the time the study was done in 2016, that's the nominal location for the tower. And as you can see, it's not really set to service forever, right? That's where they were missing or they need some, I guess, better service and better reception in that area. So the next page, please. So this proposal is really less than 100 meters from what SBA had proposed in 2016. And so subsequently was turned down by council here. You know, one of the places they could look at is an industrial area for another tower or something a little closer to Cambridge, because I believe this is actually to service Cambridge. And I just wanted to, in conclusion, to say that Mayor Foxton and council, you've done a great job of prioritizing our environment. Done a great job of stewardship looking after the residents here. So therefore, in closing, we urge you to vote against this proposal and send the letter of non-conformance to Industry Canada. With that, I'll conclude.
Thank you, Paul. Is there any questions, councillors? Seeing none. Anyone else wish to speak? Go ahead.
Councillors and Mayor, I'm Reverend Anand. I'm actually right closest to the property residing at 1145 Roswell Road, the Paris Lake property. So we are the custodians of the Paris Lake, which has an easement agreement with the organization. And one of the biggest things that we saw in the recent years is that a lot of development, new communities are coming up, which is very necessary, but also it has significant impact on the lake property. And because of that, we started a couple of stewardship programs with the GRCA, with Ducks Unlimited, with REAC, with the University of Toronto, hopefully Region of Waterloo, they're willing to fund us. So there's a lot of programs going on for the wildlife, especially the birds. So right in front of the road, there's going to be a new reconstructed wetland coming right adjacent to the road, which is right in front of the tower. So these things could, while we are trying to protect it on hand, if it's integrated in one hand, it would be not nice. So there's a lot of stewardship program going on to protect the land. So I would urge the councilman and the mayor to reconsider all the options available. Like our neighbors mentioned, we have fantastic internet. We have Rogers as well lining up their fiber line, and we have Bell.
Thank you, councillors. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? It's like a wedding. Speak now or forever hold your peace. It's not true. You get to sign the application. Go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, I have a question. In your presentation earlier, you said there were some biggest discussions about power or some meetings, but we weren't aware of that. The first I got was this letter sent out about this meeting, but I don't know what was done previously to this meeting. Like you had mentioned, you touched in your presentation, it was some kind of presentation.
March 16th, was it March 6th?
Through you, Madam Mayor, there was a public information session that was held by the applicant here in this room on March 14th. And notification was sent out by mail. There was a notice in the newspaper as well, and a sign posted on the property that notified of this meeting. So you may have been outside of the radius just because the actual, I'm not sure if that may be the case. I'll have a double check.
It probably is the case, yeah.
But yes, there was notification sent out.
Any other comments from the public? Councillors, any questions or comments? Councillor Wilms and then Councillor Roman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just want to thank everyone for their comments as well. Since I live there, I can say the cellular network is crappy. I have to stand in one spot of my house in order to do phone calls. But I do know that I do understand the importance of environmental safety. Is there other options for locations in that general area so that we can get good service, cellular service for that area? Or are we kind of stuck to this location based on the applications that?
CEO McNeely.
So, Madam Mayor, through Councillor Wilms, there was reference on a couple of occasions tonight, referencing back to the earlier tower here in 2016, 2017. And as noted, that tower was slightly to the east of where we're speaking of tonight, and was deemed to be an element of non-concurrence by Township Council. Because it was within 120 meter radii of Quickstick Creek and the environmentally sensitive lands associated with that naturalized corridor. Mr. Woodcock at the time was very kind to put together some extensive briefing notes, including the early work that was coming out of Brare's grassland bird habitat study and the relationship of that tower context work that was underway by as a specific study district to look at and grow and improve bird habitat to complement the broader systems that dominate Berries Lake, Crystal Creek corridor. We were obligated on a challenge then because filed a non-concurrence with District Canada. And then the opponent at the time then challenged the township's assertions. So we had to file a follow-up document with Industry Canada. And as part of that, we had to show alternatives that were designed to serve the nominal service area, as well as maintaining the integrity of our original position of the environmental dominance in this immediate district. So it was called the balancing act to try and achieve those objectives. The nominal service area may be slightly different today than it would have been in 2016, 2017. Because at that point in time, there was no fiber to the address. And so we had a combination of people requiring data for support of entertainment, schooling, and the like, as well as cellular activity. And so the district we were calculating today might be slightly different than in 16, 17 because of the reality that fiber now exists in that area through investments and support of Township Council. We did, as part of our analysis, identify what was to be that time a proposed water tower constructed by the region of Waterloo to serve the pressure district that's going to largely support the emerging Cambridge West subdivision, as well as the existing urban area in West Gulf. That tower literally will be under construction this summer and will be completed in 2025. It's required now for the regional tower and would be within the nominal service. What I cannot tell you is whether or not the region is agreeable to allow private entities to put the telecommunication facilities on the regional tower. However, that was one of the aspects that we identified as an alternative back in 16, 17, because there was already going to be a feature height in that location. The reality is that is now a surety in terms of tower and its location. There were other sites that we identified slightly to the west of this property that were within the buffers associated with the adjacent aggregate proposals. So we were just that much further removed from Berries Lake, Crystal Creek feature. And we were to the north and northwest on the current site being discussed. We were at the edges of the nominal service area as mapped in the year 2016-17, but largely captured the footprint that was identified by the consultant that day. Once again, slightly different zones of influence today versus 2016-17, but generally the same principles. So there are some possibilities outside of this property. The council may, in part of the conclusion come down to ask the proponent what analysis has been done on alternative locations that respect some of my presentation tonight, and specifically comments put forward by from Rand. As I indicated, that was an influential piece of paper going back to 2016, 2017. It really strengthened the position of the township because, with regards to comments, there is no standards by Industry Canada on habitat. The focus is on service to the customer and the respect for Code 6 as it relates to influence of electromagnetic waves on humans, but it is silent on on wildlife and specifically birds and insects.
Councillor Rowan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I was going to ask about the water tower in Cambridge. So CEO has answered that. The other question I have is related to the tower that we talked about in February at 405 Harmony Road. That tower is 12 kilometers away from this post tower. Would not the tower on Harmony Road service grounds as well, or is it it's a 75-meter tower instead of a 60-meter tower? So wouldn't that be able to service that area? Why do we need to build two towers so close together?
Michael.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I may ask Lucas to respond to that.
Lucas. Lucas,
Thank you,
please.
Madam. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So typically for telecommunication services and tower systems and semi-urban or urban areas can only accommodate for up to 800 to 1.5 kilometers surrounding the tower. 12 kilometers away, that location at 405 Harmony Road is 12 kilometers away, which is too far of a distance to accommodate this area. That operation is also a Bell operation. This is Signum, and Signum does have confirmation that Rogers will be on the tower, so nothing to do with Bell. Bell and Rogers also have their own business circumstances where co-location will be harder to do, but I can't speak towards that any further. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Seeing none, all comments and correspondence, the motion is just basically saying that we're going to turn it back to staff for a future report. But do we want to mention something in that report about the availability of the suggested towers in the previous reports and whether they're still valid and whether that would be more appropriate? So how do we adjust this, Kyle, to make it sound correct, or CEO McMillan?
Madam Mayor, you don't need to actually have a resolution, because all the comments that have been gained in tonight's meeting, we have the presentation summary notes. They are public reporting. Mr. Cuff has heard the comments made by members of the public as well as members of council tonight, and all of those aspects need to be answered before a recommendation report will be presented back to Township Council on whether or not to issue a letter of concurrence. So you have all comments being returned back with the current resolution that captures what council needs to do with tonight.
Thank you, CEO McMillan. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Lecoq for the information back in 2016. I believe you actually showed us 3 different sites that this could happen on, if I recall. I'm getting old, memory may be fading, but so that information, Michael, if you'd like to, I believe it's in our files, but if not, I think you can reach out to him. Is there any other questions or comments? Councillor Roman.
Madam Mayor, so I just wanted to note for staff that Mr. Cuff did focus quite a bit on co-location, and therefore that means there's less of a need for more towers. But then in his answer, he said that Bell and Rogers don't want to play together. So it doesn't sound like co-location actually works. So I just wanted to explore this a little more closely. Why can't Bell and Rogers share a tower? Why do we have to have 2 separate towers so close? That's my problem.
I think I'll take that as a rhetorical question. Are there any other questions before the motion? Councillor Austin.
Just one question, comment that Lucas made a comment that any particular tower, I don't know if it's any particular tower or this particular tower, can only have a range of 1.5 kilometers. So does that mean you have to have a tower every 1.5 kilometers in order to have service?
Lucas, do you want to clarify?
To you, Madam Mayor, it really depends on the location of the tower. So how high it is. So location, which means how many people are in that radius, the height. So the higher the tower, the more accommodation it can give. But those are two very important statistics that we use for co-location and tower siting. Can you remind me your question again? Sorry, I just got caught up in my mishap.
I think I understand what you're getting at. And what you're saying is one is the sight line where the tower makes a difference. And also the number of people you put on a tower So, and an example is a lot of us got on, well, maybe not you guys, you may be too young. But when these things were first happened, they'd have maybe 150 people on. Well, in the next year, they sold to 500 or more people, which created less and less of a signal. So the distance bases on the amount of individuals on it.
Yeah.
Councillor Austin.
Just to clarify, because we're adding comments and getting answers back for these comments. I would like to know what the difference is between different cell towers and what their actual range is. These cell towers are not usually built to accommodate 500 people in a neighborhood. They're usually built to accommodate, like, there's no way they can afford to do this. Build a tower every 1.5 kilometers to cover 500 people. Like that's not a business model. So I'd like to know what the difference is between cell towers and why some towers have a 20-mile radius range, and why we're being told this particular one might only have a 1.5 kilometer range. Maybe it's the wrong type of tower for the area.
And we will leave that question to staff to research. Thank you. So can I have the motion, please, Councillor Wells?
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Williman, that PD report number 09-2024 be received, and that all comments and correspondence received through the consultation process be returned to staff for consideration in a future report to the committee on the disposition of this matter.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And thank you all for coming and speaking. And again, make sure your name's signed up for the follow-up information. Can I have Councillor Tilley to confirm with the procedures of council?
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Ossner, that the bylaw number 3469-24 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council on March 26, 2024 be read a first, second, and third time and finally be passed, signed, and sealed by the mayor and acting clerk.
All those in favor? Good, thank you. And the adjournment, please, Councillor Williman.
Moved by myself, by Councillor Williams, that whereas business for this council meeting, public planning has been completed at 8:01 p.m. and be resolved that this meeting adjourned.
All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And thank you again for coming.